Hey guys, you're back with Steph and Dennis. It's just me again. But if you haven't already seen it, Steph recently announced that she was actually quitting her job to work on our business full time. Well, surprise, surprise, I'm actually sharing the exact same news. I've also quit my job and I'm now gonna be working on the business full time as well. So we're both officially self-employed now. Hey guys, so I'm outside the Deloitte Toronto office right now post quitting, so I guess I better keep it down, but this is where I've been for the last 3 years of my life, and to be honest with you, I always knew that I was gonna leave. I always knew that I was gonna leave once I hit the senior consultant mark, but I always thought that I'd exit into a strategy and operations role within the fintech space. But obviously we're doing this now, so you guys are probably wondering how this actually happened. Well, I actually did do some external interviewing earlier this year, so let's actually take a look at what that looked like. So when I started my search for other companies, I applied to places like Better, Viacom, N26, Simple even. I applied to Instacart, Attentive, and a few other places, all for strategy and operations manager roles. Oh yeah, I also want to mention that I was almost exclusively applying for roles in New York City. So some were in Toronto, but pretty much the majority of them were in New York City. So the way that me and Steph were kind of looking at it was, if I were to get a job in New York City, we'd actually make the move down there and, document the move, document working from a different country, and, basically all of that. Obviously, we went down a different path, but let's actually jump into talking about what it was like interviewing to leave Deloitte. Okay, so I had a few initial conversations and interviews, but I honestly had such confidence in me getting a job simply based on the fact that I had that Deloitte stamp on my resume. And honestly, that would have been the case had I been applying for roles in Canada, and more specifically here in Toronto. I mean, for the most part, when I decided to make myself visible to recruiters that I was actually searching for a job, I was getting a ton of traction on LinkedIn. But once again, it was all for roles in Canada or roles in Toronto specifically. So because I was almost exclusively applying for these roles in New York at these hot and up and coming companies, they were getting a ton of applications. And honestly, when they were seeing that Canadian address, they were seeing that I had experience from the Canadian firm, it actually turned out to be a hurdle for me. Anyways, I did do a few interviews like I said before, but probably the most notable one was the one that I did with Better. All right guys, so update on the job hunt. Just got my first interview request from a company in New York. So I'm pretty pumped. Not sure if this is gonna be the company that I actually end up with, but yeah, we're making some movement. Let's see how things go. I don't know if they can hear you, Steph. Anyways, we'll see how things go. I'm actually gonna show you guys what email is here. Let's see. Okay, as you can see there. Anyways, like I said, we'll see how things go. I've still been applying to other jobs, so fingers crossed, we get more options, So let's see. Now, from my perspective, when I found out that I was getting an interview with this company, I was super excited. Fast forward to the actual interview, it hands down sucked. Probably one of my worst interview experiences that I've ever had. Everything started off pretty well. We had scheduled the interview for one of the days, but what ended up happening is that on the actual day of the interview, keep in mind, I'd taken off the morning for this interview, the recruiter messaged me 5 minutes after the interview was scheduled to let me know that they couldn't make it. Which to me kind of was a red flag, but at the moment I was still excited about the company, was still excited about interviewing, so we pushed it back. Now, when we finally did the interview, the recruiter was not only late again, but she didn't show up prepared. She basically asked me questions, was reading directly from a script, like, you can tell. On top of that, she sounded cold, it felt super rushed, and oh yeah, she forgot to tell me that the role that I had applied for was already filled, and the only reason she bothered to do this interview was because she had other roles that she wanted to fill that she thought that I, might be interested in, but, obviously wasn't. Okay, so now that you've heard what that was like, how did I go from actually applying externally to now being self-employed? Well, basically me and Steph did a deep dive strategy meeting where we realized we loved what we were doing on YouTube, and we actually wanted more time to dive even deeper, aside from just like nights and weekends, right? Like we were kind of capped out at that. So basically at that point I decided, you know what? If I'm weighing the two options, I better cut my application process short and focus more on this. So we decided that we were gonna be leaving in June, but I didn't actually quit until the last week of August. Basically, I was waiting for performance year end, and obviously I wanted to get my bonus, wanted to make sure that I stayed the exact amount of days to secure the bag. I mean, why not? On the day that I decided to hand in my notice and actually quit, it's kind of a funny story because we'd had a bunch of turnover over the past like couple months, and my team was losing people, the practice in general was losing people. But on the day that I decided to quit, like, that morning, 2 members of my direct team announced that they were also quitting, which was just crazy, right? I'm actually gonna go ahead and slot in a couple clips that I took from that last week to just kind of document, my emotions and, whatever, everything. I'm literally in the process right now on my computer about to write the resignation letter. So I just kind of wanted to jump in and talk about how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling pretty excited, actually. So today is the day. It's finally here, and there's been kind of a mixed emotions type of thing because this morning, 2 of my direct coworkers announced that they were leaving. I'm gonna book a call with a couple of the partners and see how things go. Okay, so I'm tuning in because it's my last day of work, basically just wrapping things up. Over the last week, I've basically just been trying to pack things up, pack my monitor, laptop, phone. I'm gonna have to give all that back. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually going through this checklist, this departure checklist. Once again, super mixed emotions right now because this is the place that I've been at for the last 3 years of my life, right? If we're talking, some of those pivotal years right after you finish university, like this is where I've been. So there's that side of things, but at the same time, me and Steph are super pumped for this next chapter. I'm so excited to just bring out good content and yeah, just keep things going. I'm gonna show you guys what this departure checklist looks like right now. So for anyone who didn't know what firm I worked at, there you go. But I assume by now you guys probably know. Yeah, this is basically it. The laptop's going back. Super excited, and yeah, let's get it. So overall, in terms of actually quitting, it was pretty standard. Like I just gave in my 2 weeks notice. Luckily enough for me, I was on a project that had just started and we were only like a couple weeks in. So there wasn't much of a transition that was needed. I mean, I wrapped up a couple tasks. I also did my rounds of goodbye conversations. And what was interesting was comparing my experience versus Steph's. Okay, so it was pretty funny to see the overall vibe of my colleagues, especially the more senior ones, when compared to Steph. Like she said, basically her coworkers were super excited and just like amped up for her. Whereas on my side, the vibe was more so like, oh, that's cute, or like straight into trying to figure out how my business could benefit the firm in the future. It was really cold and more coworker-ish, as opposed to being more human about it, if that makes sense. I also want to say that although it was cool to go along the path of, accounting and finance, so in terms of schooling, and then actually getting into Deloitte Toronto and building up some of those skills that I built up there, I definitely saw myself going into, the strategy and operations space and, being a manager and eventually, moving up. And I definitely saw that path. And although that was a good path and a path that I saw myself being successful in, I do think it's also cool to take all the skills that I've built across these different organizations, across my education, and actually apply them to something that, for me, I'm building myself, and also something that I have control in terms of the impact. Listen, I'm super grateful for that, and I'm also grateful for all of you that are watching this video right now. All right, guys, that's a wrap on this video. The big updates are over for now. Me and Steph have officially quit once again. Yeah, let us know what you guys think about our, big announcement. We've kind of been teasing it for a while, so yeah, let us know. And I also want to mention that when it comes to career videos, don't worry, we're not running out of career videos just because we're not at Deloitte and PwC. Actually, now that we are no longer with those companies, there's a lot that we're going to be able to share that we actually couldn't share before. So if you're excited for that, let us know down below. Make sure you're showing us some love, especially right now with a like. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do subscribe. And if you haven't seen any of our previous videos, make sure you do check them out next door. And we will be back. You know the vibes. Let's go.